Hi, welcome to Fox Williams Fashion Law Podcast. On this podcast, we're going to be looking at the issue of collaborations in the fashion industry. My name's Steve Sitkin. I'm a commercial law partner here at Fox Williams, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Scott Steinberg, who's a senior associate specializing in intellectual property. Collaborations happen all the time in the fashion industry. Think Balenciaga and The Simpsons. Think Rihanna's Fenty brand and Puma, or Netflix and Lacoste, Chloe and Angelina Jolie. What about Castor and Andy Murray? And, most infamously, Adidas and Yeezy. And that brings us nicely on to what we are going to discuss on this edition. Collaborations in the fashion industry, what can go wrong and what you can do to avoid this. So Scott, shall we talk about Adidas and Yeezy and when collaborations go wrong?
Sure, this is probably the most high-profile and recent collaboration that went wrong. In brief, the artist formerly known as Kanye West, or Ye, started collaborating with Adidas in 2013, mainly in relation to trainers, or sneakers if you're American. This went really well for 9 years. Reportedly, it was around 8% of Adidas's revenue in 2021. Good news for Adidas. But then there were problems recently. Problem one, you cannot control what a person or company, if we're talking about collaborations generally, is going to say or do. And as I'm sure a lot of people know, Kanye West made comments which have been attributed as anti-Semitic. He recently attended Paris Fashion Week and wore a White Lives Matter t-shirt. And that led to a social media campaign where a lot of people were asking for Adidas and other brands actually to cut ties with Kanye West. And that is exactly what happened. And I believe there was a lot of pressure on Adidas because they have this agreement in place and they were taking maybe slightly longer, press-wise, as the news cycle moves so quickly, to drop Kanye West. Problem two, Adidas does follow suit with these other brands, but what does it do with its inventory that it's got invested and that it was holding? So Adidas reportedly had inventory worth around $1.3 billion. Problem number three, reputational damage from the association, of course. That even leads to, again, I just mentioned that stock. So Adidas can't destroy the products, as obviously that would lead to a sustainability issue and criticism. And Adidas probably could not continue selling the inventory because of the association. Problem four, we've got losses that are associated. Adidas could have donated the stock to those in need. That's another option. But terminating the collaboration reportedly contributed to a loss by Adidas of 600 million euros for the last 3 months of 2022 and a 400 million euro loss at the start of 2023. That's in sales. Those aren't small numbers, obviously. And then problem five, we'll call it royalties. Adidas decided to sell some of its inventory from the end of May and donate some proceeds to organizations affected by the statements made by Ye, such as the Anti-Defamation League and the Philonize and Keela Floyd Institute for Social Change, which is linked to George Floyd. But Ye would continue to receive royalties. One report I read said around 11%. So again, it goes back to that potential reputational issue that the money is still going to Kanye West. And then there's other claims. So if you read a story about Yeezy or the brand or Adidas and the collaboration, you'll see a few press reports about lawsuits, such as one I read was that there's a class action that's been filed by investors that Adidas knew about comments that were being made and behavior years before the termination and they hadn't been warned. Obviously, Adidas denies that. Watch his space with those sort of claims. And finally, another problem, I was having a look on the UK IPO trademark website, as every IP lawyer will do and loves, I'm sure. The Yeezy trademark is owned by a company called Mascot Holdings. So I had a look at what else do they own, and they own the trademark for Kanye West. So from reports, that is Kanye West's company. So Kanye West owns the trademark for Yeezy as well, not Adidas. Again, that's subject to any license agreements in place. We obviously haven't seen the contract about the collaboration, but just another interesting problem. Who owns these rights that we're talking about in the first place?
So, Scott, given the problems that Adidas has faced over the last few months, it surely begs the question, why should a fashion brand collaborate with, for example, another fashion brand?
This podcast is not to say never ever collaborate, presumably because you want your brand to grow. So that's one easy answer for why would you collaborate with another brand. But I think the first point is you may be able to target a new audience or work with someone potentially with a bigger reach in another country or internationally. So this was just an example that came to my mind, was Castor was only founded in 2015, which I was actually surprised to read because I would say it's very well known now, especially because of Andy Murray. So that's a bonus of a collaboration. These days, it's all about social media. You can build excitement about your brand. And one way of doing that is collaborating with a high profile brand. A good example is what you mentioned at the start, Steve, the 10-minute Simpsons episode showing their collaboration with Balenciaga. I think it was very easy to spot that. It certainly had people talking. I guess it was also unusual, which is why. It also leads on to the next point, that it may be a way of trying something new for your brand. Nike and Tiffany collaborated recently, which you maybe wouldn't associate a footwear brand with a jewelry brand. Footwear in this case for Nike, not that I would ever call Nike just a footwear brand. They collaborated on the Air Force One trainers with Tiffany colors and things like that. And then you had Lacoste and Netflix, which I thought was particularly interesting because they did a clothing range relating to some of Netflix's most popular shows, including Stranger Things and Money Heist, among many others. And then there's the other advantage of you can make a collaboration limited edition. And so what does that do? It means that if you're, in the case of Tiffany and Fendi, you can make a bag that was available for 24 hours and then there's a rush and then extra sales and profits and you're laughing. And then there's the other aspect. So if you partner with someone, well, in the terms of collaboration, they may be able to introduce you to a manufacturer or a distributor and have preferential rates or even just a preferential relationship that you can get things quicker. And then I would also say that it's usually best to collaborate with someone who shares your values, and that can be another way of promoting a value. So if you want to look at sustainability and environmentalism and things like that, maybe you collaborate with someone in that area, and then that shows that you are making an effort in that regard. And the final point, I guess, is a summary of all this. Fashion is a really hard industry to stay relevant and popular. So if you can collaborate with someone else to boost your brand, it makes sense.
Okay, so Scott, we've looked at the reasons for why a fashion brand should collaborate with another fashion brand, but let's go back and think about the issues that can arise, the things that can go wrong. How do we try and avoid the issues where things can go wrong?
I mean, I feel a bit biased with my opening comment here as a lawyer, but I think any lawyer, Steve, you'll probably say the same, would recommend contracts. And not just any contract, I should say. A good one would be ideal because a good collaboration agreement can deal with so many of these issues and more. I think I'll give a few examples. So first of all, who are you contracting with? That's something you might not have thought about when you start your collaboration. So before I mentioned a company that Kanye West had called Mascot Holdings. Obviously, I haven't seen Adidas's collaboration agreement, but are they collaborating with Kanye West as the individual or that company? And then what will the individual do for the brand? You can also stipulate that. So if it's a high profile celebrity or influencer or similar, what will they do? Will they attend photo shoots? Will they post certain things at certain times? And so on. And then branding. Are you going to create a new sub-brand? Or is your main brand the big enough drawer where you put the X in the middle as it's a style? And if you are going to create a new sub-brand, how's that going to be done? And who's going to own the rights? And then you can actually define what products you're collaborating on as well, because if you don't agree this and there's subsidiary products that come out or related ones, it may be a bit unclear as to exactly how far the collaboration extends to. Also, how many products are going to be made and what happens to unsold products? So you can clarify that as well. Territories is also important. So are you collaborating in the UK only? The UK isn't a member of the EU, as we know. Are you also going to include other territories like that, or the US and so on? So that can be clarified. And that leads on nicely to, well, what jurisdiction is going to govern your collaboration agreement? Because that can be an issue that you may not have thought about. So what if there's an issue in, say, Germany, but you want an issue decided in the UK, or England and Wales more specifically for our purposes? Ownership. I spoke about this briefly before, but the main point in IP as a general rule is that a third-party creator will own IP unless they are employees acting in the course of their employment. So you're going to be involving third parties here, and they will own their own rights. So who should own the collection designs? Who will apply for registered rights, if there are any, including for the brand name? Probably the most important part, at least for businesses, of collaboration, payment. How does this work? When are installments payable or not? Is payment via a lump sum or royalties? When can payment be withheld? Unfortunately, things go wrong. You don't know this person that you're collaborating with. Something might not be delivered in the time that was stipulated. And who pays other things like expenses? Is there going to be an audit in relation to royalties? I mean, it's endless, but as I said, this could be one of the most important clauses in your contract. And then I guess 2 more points. Warranties. These are to cover you. You're entering into a collaboration. What if something that the other person designs infringes someone's IP or damages your reputation? All of this can be covered. So the damage to reputation point links back to our example of Adidas and Yeezy. And termination. Again, Adidas and Yeezy. What happens if something goes wrong? Can you terminate, for example, for misconduct, serious or repeated breaches, bringing the brand into disrepute? And what happens once a contract is terminated? What happens to fees that may have been paid already or back payments? And finally, what happens to the products on termination? Can you still sell them? And so on. So those are all points that a collaboration agreement could cover, and why I guess we'd recommend one.
Thank you very much, Scott. And that concludes our podcast on the subject of collaborations in the fashion industry. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.